I get my cup of coffee and I'm like, this is all I want, right? Just some peace. It was Hayward. They're always busy. I just want some peace. It's morning time, right? I'm going to be able to finish this cup of coffee. So I drive around the Starbucks and I park behind the dumpster, or I'm trying to park behind the dumpster. And so I'm backing up, got my little coffee right here. I'm looking at my screen, still nothing on the screen. Back up, put it in park, take my coffee. And this is just all I want, right? It's like morning. I'm not a morning person. I'm a night person. I'm hating life. And I go to drink it and I hear noise. And I look and I went, I put my coffee down. There's a woman tied up and she's being pushed up. She's nude. She's being pushed up. They're behind the dumpster in between a fence, like a solid wall fence, and the dumpster. And he's pushing her up and he's punching on her. He's nude. She's nude. She's got rope around her. And I recognize her as one of our homeless females. That is a constant issue, but I recognize her. And I put my coffee down and I pick up the radio and I'm like, all right, I've got an assault, possible sexual assault in progress. Send me some people.
Okay, so Jess, you start off in 2002 with Hayward PD, and we talked a little bit about this, but essentially you're going from Palo Alto, answering sprinkler calls, to now you're in the middle of the shit.
Yeah.
You're still a Sam at this point. And can you talk about how many times you've gone to the hospital once you start working for Hayward PD?
Well, there's a couple reasons why you go to the hospital,
Okay.
If you get into a fight with somebody and you end up going to the hospital for any of your injuries, it changes it from a misdemeanor to a felony. So every time you got into a really good fight, a couple reasons to go to the hospital was to make sure that you didn't have a concussion or anything that you're not realizing is wrong with you. I didn't know I had a fractured back until I was out of policing, and it was an old injury. So you go for that, and you also go because you're hurt, and you get into some pretty good fights. Half the time, my hair has always been pretty short, and I get called sir a lot, and it used to piss me off, but it doesn't anymore. I'm just like, whatever. You're a little guy. I can understand. I'm a tall girl. Of course, you think I'm a guy, but anyway, and they'd fight. They would fight you, like full on fight you, not realizing you're a female. If you had that, chauvinistic thing, like I would never fight a girl, they didn't realize it until you were deep in the fight, or they didn't care because they're trying to get away, or they're doped up. It didn't matter. So I was in some good fights. Then, of course, my dog. So I'd have to get the person cleared. So if you have to take the suspect to the hospital anyway, you would get yourself cleared as well. So make sure you didn't have anything wrong.
So can you talk about like getting stabbed in the foot?
Oh, that was a good one. So I'd gotten stabbed a couple of times, but that one was really interesting. That guy ended up writing a letter a year later and giving me his coin, his sobriety coin. So we're talking this guy, older guy, probably in his late 40s or 50s. And I say older, I'm in my mid 50s. But for me at the time, I was, I think, in my late 30s or early 40s. He was a heavy, heavy drinker, lived in an apartment complex, but it was more of a duplex type thing. And we get this call, this woman screaming, oh my God, this guy came into my apartment, busted in, took all of his clothes off, sat on the couch. She bolted out. We get there. I'm there with my dog. It's a burglary, which we thought, right? I'm not really understanding the clothes part of it. But when somebody's all, fucked up on drugs, we've seen all kinds of things happen. So we get there. I'm there with my dog. Make all the announcements, make sure it's all recorded, make sure, everything's being done right. I've got my backup, all people I love working with, so I feel pretty secure about it. And I send my dog in. He latches onto the guy in a room that turned out to be her arts and craft room. And there was arts and craft stuff everywhere. Well, she also did leather work. So she had what's called a leatherall or a leather punch. And it looks like it's got a wooden handle and it's got like a shaft of a screwdriver type thing. You punch right through leather. During this fight of me trying to get my him to the ground and my dog off of him, he had grabbed that leatherall and just jammed it right through my boot and foot. And I didn't know. It was close quarters. You know, I've got my cover officers in there. I've got my dog controlled. They bring this guy out. He's laying in the living room. He's naked, right? So like it didn't occur to me, the guy's naked. He doesn't have anything clearly on him. So, but I had gotten punched through the boot. So they take him out. The fire department's putting him in the, you know, ambulance with the other cops. And my sergeant walks back to me and she looks and she's like, "What's in your foot?" And I looked down, I didn't even know, but he had punched a leatherall clear through my foot. Luckily, it had only taken just like, it was a superficial wound at best, as Monty Python would say. It was bleeding and stuff, but it, you know, it's not like it was right through the center of the foot. It edged it, just took a chunk off my foot.
Yeah.
And I looked down and I was just like, oh shit. Not, you know, and the fire guy comes over and he goes, "Yeah, you should have that looked at." And so that's how that went down. But this guy thought he was so fucked up on whatever he was doing, dope and alcohol, that he thought he was in his own house. He thought it was his apartment. And he did live fairly close by, just not that one.
Yeah.
And so a year later, I get a letter and this little package in my box, and I open it up, and it's him thanking me for how I treated him. He apologized at the hospital. My chief showed up at this call because the dog got him pretty good. And he apologized, said it was completely his fault, and was worried about my dog. Is your dog injured? And I'm like, well, I am, but that's fine. Yeah, the dog's fine. And really good guy, really nice letter. And inside that box that he gave me, which I opened very carefully, so it wouldn't explode, was his coin.
Wow.
Of sobriety. And I worked for a couple more years after that, and I had seen him a couple of times just on patrol, and he was clean and sober, and that was it for him. I guess that was the clicker. Finally, that was his rock bottom.
Getting bit by the dog and stabbing your foot. Okay.
And stabbing a cop. I mean, he could have gotten some really, really hard time. But I think it was his attitude and probably his lack of major criminal history.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was a cop that he actually assaulted. I mean, let's face it, it's Alameda County. Who cares what happens to the cops? So, and that was kind of the attitude. But
how about the you're getting a cup of coffee story?
Oh, I'm on day shift of all things, which I tried not to ever be on. But I was. And I went to Starbucks, as everybody does, early in the morning. And I get my cup of coffee and I'm like, this is all I want, right? Just some peace. It was Hayward. They're always busy. I just want some peace. It's morning time, right? I'm going to be able to finish this cup of coffee. So I drive around the Starbucks and I park behind the dumpster, or I'm trying to park behind the dumpster. And so I'm backing up, got my little coffee right here. I'm looking at my screen, still nothing on the screen. Back up, put it in park, take my coffee. And this is just all I want, right? It's like morning. I'm not a morning person. I'm a night person. I'm hating life. And I go to drink it and I hear noise. And I look and I went, I put my coffee down. There's a woman tied up and she's being pushed up. She's nude. She's being pushed up. They're behind the dumpster in between a fence, like a solid wall fence, and the dumpster. And he's pushing her up and he's punching on her. He's nude. She's nude. She's got rope around her. And I recognize her as one of our homeless females. That is a constant issue, but I recognize her. And I put my coffee down and I pick up the radio and I'm like, all right, I've got an assault, possible sexual assault in progress. Send me some people. hang up the mic and I get out of the car. I don't have a dog at this time. I really wish I would have, because I'd love for this guy to have gotten bit. But I go over and because he's actively hitting her, I have to separate them, right? And so as I go over, and largely as a cop, to take care of business, I realize I recognize both of them. He stops because he's always been afraid of me. I know him. And he starts to run from me a little bit. I tackle him down. I pick him up. He's naked. I throw him into the back of my car. And then she is, I won't say her name, though I want to. Everybody that sees this from Hayward knows who it is. She starts fighting me. Of course she does. She's just a pain in the butt. I'm saving her, but who cares, right? So she becomes equally a problem. That case, which was him sexually assaulting and basically raping her, went on forever. And ultimately, the DA, I had to convince the DA that she's not going to be a victim. She's going to be the worst victim in the world on the stand. She was the worst victim that at that time of the stand. And as much as you want to help someone, they don't want to be helped. So that case went on forever. I got subpoenaed at least a dozen times on that thing. And it never went to court. Nothing ever happened between the two of them because she's crazy. And and so that's my interrupted coffee and a reason why I don't work day shift. I'm just like, but that's Hayward for you.
Okay.
Hayward and they're homeless.
Okay, Jess, now let's talk about you and let's talk about your career. Things start to go bad at Hayward. Why you remained on patrol you remained on patrol your entire career. We're going to talk about your canine and a little bit about the SWAT as well. Did you ever have aspirations to become a detective? Did you ever have aspirations to go do a specialty unit?
When I entered policing, I wanted to be a motor cop. And I think when you get into policing, the things that you wanted to do after being in policing a little bit, you realize, nah, maybe not. I wanted to be a motor cop at first. And that was my big aspiration when I first started policing. And I was actually going to do that in Palo Alto until my shooting happened and I lateraled out over into Hayward. I gave up wanting to be a motor because I kind of felt like, I'm stereotyping, though it is greatly true. I just felt like maybe I wasn't good motor material because what do motors do? They have to go to accidents and they have to write tickets and everybody hates them, right? Everybody hates cops because cops give traffic tickets. And so I just thought, I'm not a fat, angry guy, so I don't think I really should be a motor cop. I hate writing tickets because I hate giving people tickets. And I definitely hate traffic accidents because I feel like the most innocent people are the ones that are involved in traffic accidents, like fatal accidents. And I had one that was really, really bad where a mom and dad, they were at their security job that night, got hit by a drunk driver. The car flipped over and they burned right in front of me and Rob. Being a traffic cop or a motor cop is not only unrewarding, but it's sad as all get out. And I'm gonna gain a ton of weight and people hate me. So, because you write tickets. And so I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I really want to have a dog. And that was my focus at that point. I did want to do undercover narcotics because I thought I would have been really good at it. And I knew I wouldn't have gotten addicted to drugs. I knew that very strongly I wouldn't because I can't even take aspirin. I don't even like taking NyQuil, the liquid. I'm like, I want no part of it because I'm a control freak. So I have to have ultimate control all the time. But I knew that, and I thought I'd be very good at it because I could pick them out and I could literally sniff drugs out. Methamphetamine made my face swell. And I knew when somebody had been smoking it and I knew when they had it because I could almost smell it. It irritated my nose. So I thought narcotics would be really good. But again, in Hayward, that's a man's area. And the women that had gotten into narcotics, I felt just really got the shit end of the stick and or had to work 1,000 times harder than the guys just to keep it or get any respect out of it. There was one female detective that did narcotics that I thought did a really good job. Her name was, and it was because she was a lot like me, didn't take any shit from anybody and could split you in half in a fight if, I mean, she held her own really well. So she did okay, but even her, and kind of as awesome as she was she got the shit talk all the time. All I heard was shit talk about her, and everybody was involved in her business all of the time. And I think that's what happens with females in policing. Every time they want to go for a special assignment that the boys want, it's almost like the press. They dig up every piece of garbage they can on her to give them a reason not to give her the position. And then when she gets it, she's so scrutinized that it makes it uncomfortable to even be in it.
At Hayward, did you always feel like you had that adversity being a female? Did it start off good and then did it get bad?
Well, for me, it started off really good. I loved it. I enjoyed it a lot until I rubbed a male officer the wrong way, because he had more seniority over me, but we were at a call together and he was, I just basically took over, put him in his place. And he literally, at the station, took me into the little kids holding cell and said, listen, I get you're new here. And I'd only been there maybe a year. But you need to know your place, and you need to know who I am. And I'm looking at him, and he's just a little guy with a huge attitude and a Southern accent. And I'm just like, oh, great, this guy's a douchebag. He thinks he's more than he is. And he did think that he was more than he was. Nobody really liked him. But I realized at that point that there's almost an expectation of what the women should do, the specialties that they should put in for, and how they should act. And most of the women on patrol took all the paper while the guys fucked around. And the women on patrol were not respected the way that even the dumbest and weakest of guys were respected and included. And I started seeing a pattern of that where I would be chasing somebody, corner them, and then be plucked out of that situation and put on a perimeter position while the guys went in there and had all the fun. And then I started seeing situations where a woman would be really, really into an investigation and be criticized for it because she took time off of patrol to investigate this case that she was going off of. And that meant that the boys would have to pick up that slack, right? That actually happened to my buddy Angela a lot. And she's chief of police now. So, and she can tell you stories where she'd have a case, she'd want to investigate it further, but she was a patrol officer, right? Well, investigations is overwhelmed and they're like, yes, investigate it. It's worth doing. But her beat partners, she's lazy. She's milking this case. She's this, she's that. Would never say it about each other, but would say it about a female trying to, do a little extra or go somewhere with a case. So I was doing really well. And I was finding bank robbers, et cetera. And I was working really well with the detectives. A bank robbery would happen. The person would get away. I'd get, the list of who it was, the BOL, be on the lookout for, and I'd find it. And I'd get accolades. And my beat partners would be all, there was no, like for the guys, they would support each other. But when the women did it, it just seemed like we were wasting time, or, oh, now she's going to be caught up in this. And there was no real accolades for the women when they did well. It was more of a, all right, well, yeah, good job.
How about being gay? Was there same type of?
Initially I didn't think me being gay mattered. I was in California of all places. And I didn't realize being gay really mattered until they just kept getting in my business. It was more of a fascination for them. When I first got to Hayward, I thought that I was worried I'd be touted as, Mark's friend, the guy that got me there, because I was realizing as I was listening to people that he wasn't really well liked. He was up there because he was a lieutenant, but he wasn't really well liked. And that's the smoke and mirrors of Hayward. You think somebody is really well liked and they're not, right? You think the chief of police is admired by her staff. They're behind the scenes trying to get her fired, which they did. I say good because she deserved to, be run out. But anyway, so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of not really knowing what's in front of you, and a lot of getting it right in the back. So for the first couple of years, I was loving it because I thought things were going really, really well. And they were, as long as I didn't put in for what someone wanted, like narcotics, like a detective's position, like, sometimes motors, or SWAT. And for me, I wanted to do other things, but, and I really liked being in Hayward, but I also really didn't know what was going on. And you never do until you're in it and then start looking around. And I started looking around because we went into the whole testing process, not just for special assignments, but for sergeant, et cetera. And there were these women doing really, really well, getting number one on the list, me being one of them, and just being completely disregarded or passed over. And nobody really gave a shit. Not getting special assignments, not even being considered for them, though they tested really well. And it got to the point where the first thing you want to say is, why do we even have a testing process if you're not going to choose off of it? And then the second thing going, well, I'm seeing a pattern of who's being picked up here and who's not. And they're all hanging out at the barbecue together, related, or best friends from high school. And it was super, super noticeable. To add on to that, I started realizing how women are being treated, and it wasn't good at all. If you made it to sergeant, you were highly criticized. No one wanted to work for you. And if you weren't being criticized and people did want to work from you, you were really everything you did was scrutinized. Whereas Joe Idiot Sergeant here could pretty much get away with everything and like nobody cared.
Yeah.
So I started noticing that, and it was really evident and getting bigger and bigger. And then it blew up. We had, I would say at that time in Hayward, maybe not the best selection of eye candy women. Like, most of us coming in were, a lot like me, not really fingernails, lipstick, and the whole bit. There was Angela, but she's awesome and outgoing and the whole bit. And but we didn't really have any eye candy coming, any girly girls coming in. And all of a sudden we got this one that came in from the sheriff's department. And I won't say her name, but anybody from Hayward watching this knows who it is. And one of our sergeants in particular, really liked her. And I started noticing how she was being treated really not well by the women, and rightfully so, because the sergeant that really liked her was married to another female sergeant that saw what was going on and started hating her. And I would go into the locker room and she'd be crying. This girl couldn't even go write a parking ticket without 3-4 cops covering her. And I'm like, well, where the fuck are these guys when I'm fighting people, right? Oh, well, I guess I'm not writing a parking ticket. So I started realizing, okay, they're crowding around this poor girl because everybody wants a piece of it, right? Who's going to be her husband? And that's kind of how it is in policing.
Mm-hmm.
A pretty girl comes in and she's married to someone. I mean, usually somebody climbing the ladder. And this poor girl was just not having it, not liking it. It's Hayward. Do your research and you'll see that from 2011 to 2013, I think, 5 cops got fired, some imprisoned for crimes against women or children. And there's no boundary. And I mean, I started realizing where I was working.
What do you think it was about Hayward that made the situation bad with people going to prison or whatever else?
I felt like they could get away with it.
But why was that? No leadership up top or what?
The leadership sucked, and or was just as bad as some of the officers, and then of your community. You know, it wasn't really much of a white community. You know, and you know your leadership is bad when, first of all, it's not consistent. We went through it. I was there from 2002 and ultimately until 2015, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 chiefs of police.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
high, that's
a
high
lot.
turnover. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And so the leadership was a huge issue, and every single one, you know, seemed to leave for some sort of weird reason. When they fired the chief that hired me because he was not coming to work, et cetera, they ran him out. Basically, there was an interim chief that was my chief from Palo Alto. Good guy. And he was there for about 6 months to kind of fix stuff. It was really bad. And I was still new, so I really didn't know what really bad meant. But he told me before I left, get out. You don't want to work here. This is not a well put together place. There's a lot going on here. And I said, you know, Chief, I really like it. And he said, then lay low. Well, I'm not a lay low person, so that didn't work out for me. But and it's funny too, because there was a female sergeant, and she actually retired out as a lieutenant, and she always said this to me: keep your head down. And I never really knew what that meant until I retired, and then I was like, why didn't I keep my head down? I mean,
Okay, so I'm going to try and keep this, because I mean, there's a story to talk about here. But before we start, and I'm not really quite sure how to do it, but let's do this. At some point, you become a canine officer.
yes,
Even though at some point you stand up for another female, you're starting to take grief, you put in for a canine spot. I get the impression from talking to you, they did not want you to be a canine officer, right?
yeah. So I wanted to be a canine. So you said, why, you know, did you have any aspirations in policing? Well, yeah, we all do.
Mm-hmm.
But just because I had aspirations doesn't mean that that was going to happen. So I really wanted to be a canine, and I had put in for it, and I had done all the work, and I had tested really, really well. But my sergeant and he was the sergeant of canine, and then ultimately the lieutenant of canine, even after the lawsuit, he brought me in and he said, you tested #1 on the test. And I was like, yes, right? And this is where I really, really learned that this was a good old boy system. He said, you tested #1. You did really, really well, but we're going to give it to him because he's a better fit. And I'm like, this guy's been on for like 8 months. He just got here. What do you mean you're going to give it to him?
How long have you been on for at that point?
At that point, I had been on for almost 4 years.
Okay.
So, and with prior police experience, obviously from
Right.
Palo Alto. So
Right.
I was like, I don't understand this. Well, he's just a better fit. And I'm all, I don't, how is he a better fit? Like, I haven't really even seen him out doing what I've been doing. And he goes, Jess, like, you're going to want to have like a baby someday, right? This guy literally said this to me. And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, you know, you're going to want children, so you're not going to have the time and what you need for a canine. I go, well, I'm not having children now. And I'm like, you have guys in the unit that have children. And he said, yeah, but they have wives. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to win this conversation. I also hate this guy. So I'm going to bow out and just say, okay, well, so then, and then they kind of waved the carrot of a, potentially we might have a narcotics dog, which we think you would be better for. We really, really, really are trying to get that. They weren't. That was just a carrot that they were dangling because they didn't want me to pitch a fit that I was #1 in the testing, but basically being told, because you're female, you're not getting it. We want this guy in the unit because, you know, we can all sit in the hot tub together and talk about, you know, whatever we want to without having to worry, right? So I I was pissed off about that, but not really exploding yet. I didn't really, and I was watching women try out for things or put in for things, test for things, and not get them, being passed over as sergeant and not get them. And I was really noticing just this blatant pattern that nobody really cared. Yeah, no, we didn't, what are you going to do about it type thing. And it was pissing me off. But then when she came and I saw how she was being treated, I had come to hand my report in one night, and the sergeant literally was so up on her, arm around her and everything, going over her report in the sergeant's office, going over her report this way. And I'm like, not that I want that, but I've never been treated like that. And I'm actually dating one of the sergeants here, and she doesn't treat me like that. So it was just so, and this guy was married to that other female sergeant. And I just thought, no wonder Shannon is crying. Like, this girl can't go anywhere without guys being all up on her. So I marched my little ass into the watch commander's office like an idiot and sat down with the watch commander and said, are you seeing this? And she's like, yeah. And I go, do you realize that this girl's crying in the locker room and she's just like hating it here? And this is how she's treated. And I gave examples of what was going on. And she goes, yeah, well, we all, this is what she said, this is a female brand new lieutenant. She goes, well, we all have to do our time. And and then I said, well, I heard that she's suing the department. And actually, it was the lieutenant that told me. And I said, I don't blame her. As a matter of fact, I hope they don't talk to me, because I'll let them know what's going on. And the second that I said that, this lieutenant, who was a friend of mine, her whole body changed. Like, we were no longer friends. And I've never had something so immediately obvious happen to me before, but just that whole change. And I just went, oh shit, I can't believe I just said that. I think I just screwed myself pretty good here. And I had.
Yeah.
She basically got cold. I left. And the next thing I know, I'm being called into the IA office for saying fuck in briefing. Fuck is pretty much a word that everyone says in briefing over and over and over again. And literally, that is what I was being IA'd for, using the word fuck in briefing.
Getting back to the canine thing,
yeah.
After all this happens, where you're talking about lawsuits and everything else, they begrudgingly
give
you a spot. Is that because of the complaints that you're starting to file against the PD?
It's because I was number one on the sergeant's test and they didn't want to promote me. So the chief at the time had come from Walnut Creek or Concord, one of those areas. And he brings me into his office and he says, you're number one on the sergeant's list. And I'm all, I know. Like, come on now. There's not a test I didn't take that I didn't know I was going to ace and be number one in. And I just had a huge chip on my shoulder. And I was just, you could either like crawl underneath a rock, run around scared, or you can just get defiant. And that's what I did. I got a huge chip on my shoulder and I put in for everything. And I made sure I tested number one for everything. And I was trying to scare them. Like, you're not going to go ahead and IA me for whatever you want to IA me for. First of all, prove it. If there's one thing I've learned in Alameda County, it's this: prove it. And I just got defiant. And so I put in for things and I did very, very well on the testing. I made sure I was the smartest person in the room all the time, no matter what, and or tried to be. And he said, you're number one on the test, but you're just not promotable. And I'm all, gosh, I wonder why I'm not promotable. And he goes, however, I know that you want a canine and a position is opening up and we have a dog for you. And I'm like, okay. So they give me a dog that the handler's lateraling over to another police department because he's on the verge of being fired. And this dog had bitten just about every cop and did not let go of a bite when he was on it, would not call off of a bite. Basically just the biggest, heinous dog that they could give me, thinking, we'll give her this dog. It'll be a complete and total failure and point proven, right? So they give me Gizmo and would not send me to school so that I could go out on the street with him. just put it off, put it off, put it off. Finally, we end up going to school, and now we're on the street. So,
But talk about your first engagement where they come over to your house and go,
oh yeah. So they bring Gizmo over to the house, and he's in the back of the car. He's in the back of the truck. And they all have these smiles on their faces, right? The lieutenant, the cool guy that is worried about me being pregnant, is there. And the sergeant's, he's the lieutenant at the time, and the sergeant's there, a guy that I love and respect. He's also there, kind of not, and you could tell he just doesn't like what's going on, but it is what it is, right? And so they said, dog's in the car. And now we're talking Gizmo, right? We're talking a dog that has no problem biting cops, and is hard to control. And so I'm like, I just put in my mind, I'm just like, you know what? I don't care. Whatever you guys throw at me, I don't care. I march out to the truck, open up the kennel, hook him up, walk him back into the backyard, and they're waiting. They're on my step watching, thinking that this dog doesn't know me and is going to come out and, it's not going to like anything. But I hook them up, walk them into the backyard, feed them their sandwiches. They leave. They gave me this rickety ass kennel with no top, coming apart, this igloo of a house that is just looks like literally they drug it there from behind the car. Just all crap equipment just to make this hard on me. And so I walked out after they had left, opened up the door to the kennel, and I could probably I can't get in trouble for it now. Who cares? Yes, I let him out of the kennel. He never went back in the kennel again, ever. Broke all kinds of policies there. Took him everywhere I went. More policies broken. Took him to the coffee shop. More policies broken. Damn right. And that dog loved me. Never bit another cop again, even though he says he bit him. He didn't. And then called off every single time. My sergeant, the one that I respect, stood there, no equipment on, said, send your dog on me. I did. I sent Gizmo at him, called him off, called him back, and Ray just got this smile on his face, like he was proud that I had shoved it up their butt as far as I could, which is why I love and respect him, because he's just one of those guys that he knew what was going on in the police department, didn't want any part of it. But I mean, the guy had been divorced. He was paying child support. He's got a house. What's he going to do? Blow up his life for, and that's why a lot of cops never say anything. I'm not going to blow up my life for someone else because I've got all these bills to pay. How are you going to pay them?
Yeah.
So I do understand that. And I do understand why a lot of police officers never stand up for things, because especially back then, you just ruin yourself. You ruin yourself unless you have it on video, which ultimately that's what it took. You have no case. You're just one cop that's now disgruntled, now has the microscope over you, that nobody likes and nobody will trust again. I mean, you really, for as many cops as that could 100% trust that I would stand right next to them no matter what we went into, none of them wanted me next to them anymore because I had blown up what other cops had done. So, and if you're a cop not doing anything wrong or just handling what's in front of you the best way that you can, you have nothing to worry about. But what we're seeing is you have everything to worry about because every couch potato in the world wants to Monday morning quarterback you and is allowed to. But at the time, there wasn't any kind of film like that. And it was just your other, coworkers and your command staff that were doing it to you. And it depended on who you were. Mm. It depended on what your race was, and it depended on what your gender was.
Tell me about, so Gizmo never bites another cop again. What makes a good canine officer? First of all, why did you want to become a canine officer? And ultimately, why do you think you were successful as a canine officer? Well,
initially I wanted it because I love animals, I love dogs, and I had a lot of respect for the canines that I was watching. They not only had to control this animal, but they had to control the cops around them, which makes being a canine really, really difficult because let's face it, an FTO has enough of an issue trying to control a brand new cop. But when you have to control a volatile situation, a a priority situation, because that's what you use a canine for, and all the cops around you, it's stressful, it's difficult. You have to have a certain command presence. And I really admired it. So I thought, these guys are the shit, and that's what I want to do, right? Loved animals. And then I wanted to do it. Probably the biggest reason why I wanted to do it is because I was told I can't do it. So, and then when I got it, I was told I wouldn't make it. So, yeah, Gizmo was awesome. Got many, many more bites, and they put me in every situation that they possibly could for him to have an accidental bite or for me to screw up so that they could toss me off the team. And every single situation they put me in was a success. And
why do you think that was? What was it that you did differently than that other?
Well, we were suing the city at the time. So a lot of people wanted me not only fired, some wanted me hurt or dead.
Yeah. But why were you successful with Gizmo and the other officer wasn't? What do you think you did as canine officer?
Yeah, his previous handler was honest. When he tried to, he had kids and he had a wife, and a pretty, a family life where, he did a lot with the neighbors and things like that. So Gizmo went from kennel to car, kennel to car, kennel to car. With me, Gizmo was in the house, sleeping on the floor next to me, at the coffee shop, at the lake, did everything with me. And I think Gizmo's no different than any other dog. When you socialize a dog and when you bond strongly with that dog, and me being a dog trainer now can tell you, when you have consistency, training, praise, consequence, praise, you've got a well-behaved dog. You see people walk dogs and the dog's walking right next to them, right? And the dog does tricks and the whole bit. That's not a dog that they just picked up and they don't spend any time with and is in the kennel and, 8 hours of the day. That's a dog that's with them all of the time. And they are learning not only from each other, their moods, etc., but that dog wants to be with you. And canine training went from beating your dog to doing what you wanted it to do, to trainers like Brett Titus going, no dog wants a handler that's an asshole. Your dog will do everything for you if your dog likes you. It will return to you. It will call off for you. It will stay next to you. It will not attack other things. You can launch it out and it will come back to you with what you want it to come back to you, And Brett wanted to change this way of dog training from picking up the dog and helicoptering it and slamming it on the ground, do what I say, to a lot more praise and bonding. And that's what I started doing with our team as well. Listen, you guys need to start spending time with your dog. There was this machismo thing. The dog had to be intact and it had to be car, kennel, because all it needs to do is want to work, right? It wants to be in that car. And with Kroll and Gizmo, that I found, not only did they want to work more, but they wanted to work more for me, not just to get in that car. It didn't matter what car I was in. And I think canine training has really come a long way from, I'd say, from 2008 on, to where trainers are realizing, a lot of them are realizing, we can't train dogs the way that we used to. Not only does it not look good out there, but you get more out of your dog when you don't, when you bond with them.
Okay, so at some point you end up getting on the SWAT team. Is that they specifically, is that SWAT team position for you because you have the dog?
Yeah, and I like the way you said it because it makes it sound real cool. At some point I ended up getting on the SWAT team, which is total bullshit. Okay. At some point, my chief decided that, and this was, a big part of this was, I don't know if you know anything about the 4 Oakland officers that were killed, but a motor cop made a stop on a parolee. Another motor cop came to fill with him. The parolee killed them both. Ran, gets holed up inside an apartment. SWAT goes in there to get him, and 2 more SWAT officers are killed, right? Had they sent the dog in first, they would have known yes, he is in there, and yes, he is armed, because the dog would have ended up dying. So my police department stance on that was, we really need to use these robots and these canines first before we go into situations. We don't want to lose cops. We just don't.
Okay,
Right.
wait a minute. I want to ask you a question though. I'm assuming you have this bond with this dog, sending a dog in knowing that it might be hurt or killed. What's your thought on that?
My thought every day, I thought about that. And it was, for me, it was worse, I think, than anyone. And I'm not trying to say that I'm better than anyone. I'm just saying this. My dog was my only cover. I had sued the police department. No one was covering me. I was alone. It was me and my dog in many, many situations. And the handful of cops that did fill for me, which I will love till I die, you know, I had to protect them too, because they couldn't be affiliated with me.
But, and maybe you can only speak for yourself. Maybe other canine officers feel this way, but is there any, I mean, obviously the canine is a tool.
Yeah.
But do you have any trepidation of sending this dog that you clearly have a bond into a situation that,
Yeah, because I knew if my dog got killed in this situation, not only would I lose my dog, which would be crushing, my partner, which would be crushing, but I'd be back on patrol without a dog and no partner. So I was losing more than just a tool that could be replaced. I was losing everything that was helping me at work or protecting me at work. So for me, every situation I went to, and I went to a lot, like a lot, many canine cops don't really get to use their dog. I talk to cops here and they're like, how many bites did you have? And I tell them, and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, how many have you had? And well, I've been on 4 years and I don't have any. And I'm all, what? I mean, you know, we used our dogs, even when it was, you know, violent felonies only, I was still being used a lot. And my dog got a lot of bites. Both of them did. And so when I lost my dog, I lost everything.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that it's just that dog was literally in my life all I had. I was not good in relationships. I wasn't married. I wasn't gonna get married. And it's all I have no family. So it was me and that dog. So my career sucked and all I had was the dog. My social life, you know, friends were great, but, you know, romantically sucked. So that's dogs all I had. And, you know, it was a huge blow to me. It was my life would blow up. So every time I went into those situations, and this is ultimately where I realized that I had pretty bad PTSD and I needed to do something about it, is I wanted, if the dog was going down, I was going down too. And that was my mindset, and that wasn't good for anybody. And so, because I was just done, you know.
Okay, so talk about how you end up on the SWAT team. I interrupted you. You got it was the Oakland officers. They get killed.
Yes, they get killed, and my chief has this this idea and just this, that we need a dog on the team no matter what. So they tried putting one of the Malinois on the team. That was the dog's name was Nero. His handler was an awesome dude, a Marine, also on the SWAT team. And it didn't work out because Nero was just crazy and it didn't work out, right? And so my chief, I think, realized I had gone to Colorado, and I did his training with TAC dogs, where military dogs and special forces dogs, SWAT dogs, and then I was one of the only patrol dogs there. And I didn't realize it was a competition. I thought it was a week and a half of intense training, and I ended up winning with all these freaking awesome guys. I tied for first place, so by draw, I got second. Only female, only patrol dog, me and Kroll was my second dog at the time. So when I came back, and they had realized that, learned I had done so well, and I went there with my SWAT guy and his dog Nero. They're like, oh, I got this great idea. We hate her. Let's put her at the door of every volatile situation that we have. And the dogs are now going to be on the SWAT team. So here we were, SWAT team right behind us, looking completely different. We're in our blues with our dog, no equipment, no helmet, no nothing, at the entrance of every freaking call.
So essentially,
we were voluntold to be on the SWAT team.
So
we
it's
were not.
Yes, but so essentially you're assigned to the SWAT team, but you're not necessarily part of the SWAT team.
Oh no.
And and talk about those guys. You want to go to the training with them, and what do
we
they
want
do?
to go to the trainings. They don't want any part of that. My whole unit was actually fighting. All four of us were fighting. Hey, if you want to use any given dog, and then pick one special dog that works well with you, you need to give us the equipment, and we need to be there for the trainings. And I honestly, I don't have any solid evidence to this, but based on everything that had happened up until that point, I honestly felt like I was the biggest hindrance for that to happen. I felt like they didn't want me around. I had been suing the police department. I was female. I obviously was not going to back down to anyone. I was opinionated. I'm not going to cower. And I felt like I was probably the biggest hindrance to that happening. It did slowly happen, and we did go to a few, because there were some good sergeants on that SWAT team that are like, yeah, we need to do this. They need to be a part of this. And so we did do some of it, but not the way you would. So we were doing deployments with the SWAT team, and honestly, I'm like, well, on the way there, I'd say goodbye to my dog. I would film on my little phone a goodbye message to whomever I was with at the time and my good friends. I had a funeral tape made up, and I would change it all the time. And every single time I went on a deployment, I would just tuck that little funeral. My buddy at work, Angela, knew where to go for my stuff. And I would just imagine having to film a little funeral tape every single time you're going to go out on a deployment. And then some of them you're not knowing because you're on call. So on the way there, filming in the car up on your little mount that fell over all the time that you put into the dash, your goodbyes to everyone, because you just didn't know how that was going to end, and had no faith that you were coming back.
So you just, holy.
Yeah.
So you tell me. I mean, so you basically, you're getting into these situations where you think you're going to get killed because you think these guys are just going to let you.
Some of them. There were some guys, and that's just it. When people say, the cops are this, the cops are that. I worked for a shit department, and I'm not going to pretend that I didn't. But I would say we had 175 cops, right? 130 of those cops were fucking amazing. It's the other ones you have to watch out for. And that's the problem. I knew there were guys on that SWAT team even that were like, not if I can help it. But there were guys on that SWAT team that were just like, here's an opportunity, and said it, literally said it. And so again, you fall back into being one of the good cops on that SWAT team, hearing, but not being a part of, right? Mm-hmm. Do I want to blow up my life for this person? 14 women sued this police department. Half of them are gone within that first year. The other half were gone 2 years later. Do I really want to be a part of standing up for this crowd that's probably not even going to be here? No.
So Jess, you end up suing the department along with these other women, and this process takes forever. You get to a point that you told me where, it just kept dragging on, and ultimately you ended up in front of a judge.
So suing the department took 3 years.
Okay.
But me retiring. So I'm going through all this stuff, and this is just how I feel within the walls of the police department, mm-hmm. and what I'm watching for. But then I've got all these tragedies happening just as part of policing.
Yeah.
Going to calls where 4-year-old girls are blown away during the day while they're playing in the front yard. And, just the car flipping over and having to watch them burn, getting into situations where I'm being shot at, just the normal stuff that you have to go through, the tragedy that you see in policing, the crap that we have to deal with, taking its toll because I'm a shit attracting magnet. It just constantly is happening. Then worrying about not getting cover, my cops wanting to see something bad happen to me, being put in situations where I don't feel safe and know that I'm not, and fighting for everything. It starts to take its toll.
Okay, so talk about that last hearing with the judge then.
So it's years have gone on. It's now 2017, and we finally get our final hearing. And my attorney goes in and lists. The judge had gotten a pamphlet of everything that I had been through, what the psychiatrist said, what my attorney has said, what I have testified to. And the judge is like, just shaken. My attorney came back and said, not only was the judge shaken, she looked at the other attorney and said, what more do you want this person to be put through? And I get it. The attorney for the city at the time, they have a job to do. No disrespect toward them, no anger toward them. They have a job to do, right? But it was literally my corrupt chief of police that was run out for, what she had done, that just said, no, she absolutely is not getting a retirement. And that's another thing you have to worry about in policing, where you could be seriously injured and really, really have to fight for it, or you can be a good old boy, kick some handcuffed prisoner in the head and granted your back injury so that you don't get fired and lose everything. Mm. And that's what I talk about when I talk about the corruption in policing, not just what we do outside of those walls, but what we do inside of those walls as well. Mm-hmm.
Looking back on your career, with everything that happened, with kind of the, I don't know, for lack of a better term, for the negativity to happen to you toward the end with Hayward, your PTSD and everything else, was your career worth it?
One of the biggest things that cops always say when they're on the job is, I can't believe I get paid for this. I don't think they're saying that today. I bet you that doesn't come out a lot. And my saying was, I'm living the dream. I always said that. Hey, Jess, how's it going? Living the dream. There's a lot of sarcasm in that when I was saying it. Mm-hmm. But I look back now, I remember the bad. I remember the good. I remember what I got out of it and what I didn't get out of it. And I wouldn't change going into policing and being a police officer for the world. It was me. It was who I was. It was sad that it's not who they were allowing me to be. Mm-hmm. But that happens. And I'm not the only person that it's happened to. I'm sure if you talk to a lot of females and you ask them, did you have any aspirations in policing? You'll probably get the laugh first, which is yeah. And then you'll get hopefully the honest answer, which is, it's like winning the lottery. It's not going to happen to all of us. And it's sad because it should be based off of merit, should be based off of how you test, it should be based off of what your skill set is, but it's not. And there might be a police department out there that is like that, right? Mm-hmm. In Canada. But I think that, especially depends on who you are.
You seem, you and I have talked a lot. You seem very emotionally there. You seem very pragmatic. The conversations we've had, I find very humorous. What was it? Did it take time once you were finally granted your retirement? Did it take time to finally deal with that PTSD, or what did you do to finally get to a place where it's like, okay, now I feel good?
Well, when I'm awake, I feel good because I won't allow myself to feel otherwise. I still can't sleep. Sleep is the hardest thing for me. And I thought that it was because I was on midnights for so long that, I can't sleep during the night because that's when I'm supposed to be up. Like my body was that way. But you never get over PTSD. These things don't go away because they happened, right? You can't unhappen these things.
Right.
And then a lot of the guilt, it could be the bigger things and it can be the smaller things too. The relationships you lost, the things that you did based off how you reacted to things, like I said, policing was the best thing that ever happened to me and the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. But did you see a counselor? Do you see a counselor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw a counselor for the longest time.
Did it help?
Yeah, it did, because it feels good to be able to, for me, it felt good to be able to talk very freely and say everything that happened without being stabbed in the back with it.
Yeah.
So as much as I wanted to go to a lot of my friends and some I could go to, but then how much do I want to weigh them down with this?
Yeah.
So I tried to protect my friends, and I went and saw Marilyn who was my therapist for the longest time. And at one point we just would call each other because of traffic, and traffic in California sucks. PTSD never goes away, and I still deal with it. But what has helped is living here, talking about it, and then just kind of, letting it go. But my hardest times are just trying to sleep. I dream a lot, and my sleep is just constantly interrupted. I blame it on menopause. I blame it on everything, but it's always been this way. It's been this way since I was 35. Just the stuff I was seeing, the stuff I was going through. I would really, really, like, some people take pot or THC or CBD. And again, I'm a control freak.
Right.
I won't even take Tylenol PM. And sometimes, like, my doctor and I have really kind of discussed, like, I'm going to have to eventually take something because I'm not getting sleep and it's aging me, even though I'm old. And it gets to me. I'm retired, so I could nap during the day or what have you. So yeah. I am, but it would be nice. I can tell you probably on both hands how many nights I've slept through, which, I wake up at 3:30 every night, every night, or 1, but consistently every night at 3:30, I wake up, I wear that little watch, and I could show you the thing. And every night, anywhere from 3:30 to 3:48, and there's a reason for it, but I wake up and I would just really like to sleep. I think more than anything.
Okay, 2 final questions I always ask. Did law enforcement affect your family?
I didn't have a family, so no.
Okay, but does it?
It affected my relationships.
Okay.
Big time.
Okay. In what way?
There was someone that was really, like, could have been like it for me. We all find that person that kind of checks every box. I actually have that person now, so I guess law enforcement did me a favor. But there was it ruined it. There was just law enforcement made sure that didn't happen.
Was it? I'm going to ask you a question because maybe it's different for you. Was it the long hours, or was it because all the shit you were having to deal with?
It was the shit that I was having to deal with.
Okay.
And I think in police, I fell into the, fall for your coworker. And because we were female and because we were gay, that just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Everybody and their brother was involved in our relationship, and it was more entwined than you think. And I'll tell you off camera, but just because I don't really talk about that person much anymore.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't gonna happen.
Okay.
And it was because everybody was involved.
Yeah.
So,
Looking back on your career,
yeah.
from when you started, I mean, as a kid up until even now, do you think being an officer, being in law enforcement affected the way that you see people?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people use the word jaded.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm just aware of the people in front of me. I'm not jaded by them because I've got some friends, like my buddy Mike. He was on parole for running marijuana, which now wouldn't even have gotten him arrested. But he's a really close friend of mine. I'm not jaded against people. I don't think people that have had run-ins with the law are pieces of garbage. Some of them are my closest friends, like Mike.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm aware. I think law enforcement made me aware of what was in front of me, and it helped me choose better.
I get exactly what you're saying, but do you go out say you go to a hardware store today and you're looking around, do you ever look at somebody more suspiciously that because you were a cop than, maybe if you weren't a cop? Do you have those ideas going, I wonder what that guy's up to?
Do I sit facing the door? Absolutely.
Okay.
And I will never stop.
Okay.
I definitely sit facing the door. I definitely know, I can spot Chester the molester from a million miles away. And I am very aware. And that's what I'm telling you. I don't think it jaded me. I think it made me aware. I'm totally aware of my surroundings. And I think 95% of the cops are, because you have to be.
Jess, thank you very much for the interview. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.